everybody, and welcome to our show, Beyond Your Screen. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Bloggsy. And here on our channel, we intend to dive headfirst into some of the world's most interesting tales.
We're going to be discussing a wide variety of topics, from murder mysteries to origin stories, urban legends, and much, much more.
So drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and join us as we explore the mysteries and scandals that happened beyond your screen.
Now, I'm sure you've all heard about cursed franchises, movies, things just, if it can go wrong, it will. People going crazy, passing away, all sorts of crazy things going on.
Such franchises of note would be The Crow, Poltergeist, The Exorcist, or The Omen. But we're pretty sure that this particular curse has flown under the radar, and this alleged curse is the Superman curse.
Now, apparently many people who have been involved in these movies have claimed that Superman has ruined their career, or it has been a direct or indirect cause of what has gone wrong in their life.
So, we have 12 men here, and the people also appearing alongside them in their films. We're not going to be talking about the comic books, the writers, the illustrators, just the live-action actors that acted in the TV shows or the movies. And that leaves us with these 12 men and their franchises, which would be Kirk Alyn, George Reeves, Christopher Reeve, John Haynes Newton, Gerard Christopher, Dean Cain, Tom Welling, Brandon Routh, Henry Cavill, Tyler Hoechlin, Nicolas Cage, and David Corenswet.
So let's jump right into our first actor, which would be Kirk Alyn. Born October 8th, 1910, he started his acting career on the Broadway stage in the 30s, later moving to Hollywood in the 40s, only appearing in a few minor things at the beginning of his career.
He first appeared as Superman in the very first live-action movie in 1948, and again 2 years later in the sequel in 1950. When he was first asked to do the role by the Day producer Sam Katzman, he thought it was fake.
He later told the public, "I thought it was a publicity stunt. I didn't think you could ever put Superman on film. They brought the people over from DC Comics and they said, hey, he looks a lot like Clark Kent. They asked me to remove my shirt, so I did, and I flexed my muscles. Then the guy said, take off your pants, and I said, wait a minute. I was 37 when I portrayed Superman."
After his run as Superman, he took a role in 1952 as DC character Blackhawk. Then once again in 1978 Superman as Sam Lane, the father of Lois Lane, in a scene that was sadly later cut from production. Alyn was offered a TV show, but claimed that he was already typecast and didn't want to make it worse, and therefore turned it down.
He also said that because of Superman, he could no longer get any work, and he didn't want to make it worse. Now, I'm really not seeing anything that qualifies as a curse here. Many actors head to Hollywood, get a few little bit pieces, and then just kind of fizzle out. He had so many things. I have a list here. In 1949, he starred in 2 movies, Radar Patrol vs. Spy King and Federal Agents vs. Underworld Incorporated. Professor Machin in the 1983 film Scalps. He had a small part in the beginning of the end as a pilot. The Great White Hope, The Savage, Dennis the Menace TV show, and Corgi of Gasoline Alley.
So Alyn did have work after playing Superman.
Most definitely, and before. Again, like I said, I'm really not seeing something that can qualify as a curse. He didn't have any great tragedies in his life.
Though not considered overly tragic, this is still an unfortunate thing to happen to someone due to their portrayal of the Man of Steel. George Reeves' story, on the other hand, has a bit more to it.
Now, at the beginning of his career, he was assaulted basically everywhere he went. Every event he went to, walking in the grocery store, all sorts of stuff. Now, granted, it was mostly just 8-year-old boys trying to see if he really was Superman, but I would think about a week of getting punched in the thigh by an 8-year-old a dozen times would hurt a lot.
During an event that Reeves was hired to do, a young man approached him, wielding a Luger pistol. He wanted to prove the validity of Superman's bullet-deflecting invincibility. To Reeves' quick thinking, he was able to dissuade the young man from discharging the weapon, as he stated that if the bullet hit him, though it would not hurt the Man of Steel himself, it could possibly deflect and harm one of the audience members around.
Thankfully, the little boy understood what Reeves was saying and that he could hurt other people even though he couldn't hurt Superman, and no one was hurt in that altercation. Reeves kicked off his career as Superman in 1951 in the pilot movie Superman and the Mole Man, and then he jumped right into the TV series that ran from 1952 to 1958. But in June of 1959, just 3 days before he was about to be married, this is where the story gets very interesting.
Now, this is where people claim the curse actually started, because around 4:30 in the morning on June 16th, 1959, Phyllis Coates was woken up with a phone call. Coates was Reeves' co-star and played fellow reporter Lois Lane. She was awoken to find the voice of Tony Mannix on the other end of the line. She was hyperventilating and deranged and whispered the words, "The boy is dead. He's been murdered."
Now, Tony Mannix was the wife of Eddie Mannix. Eddie Mannix was a very powerful MGM executive. And if this man wanted you to disappear, you were gone. He had very sketchy connections. He was not someone you would want to tangle with. George didn't get this memo because he was having a not-so-secret affair with Tony Mannix. Now, there wasn't really anything solid to their relationship. Tony Mannix just thought George Reeves was a really, really handsome guy and wanted to be on the arm of him all the time.
Eddie Mannix had a lot of power and knew all about the two's relationship, but he actually didn't care as long as his wife stayed more or less discreet. She could be with whomever she wished.
Now, it is no joke that any man offered a superhero role, it would be their dream. I mean, I couldn't think of hardly any men who wouldn't love to play Batman or Superman or Iron Man. But George Reeves found his role as Superman very unsatisfying. He thought the character was one-dimensional. He wasn't getting paid enough. And on top of that, he was struggling with relationships outside of work.
So, when the police found Reeves dead in his apartment with a gunshot wound to the head and a Luger P08 in his right hand, most people assumed it was a suicide. But there were many, many things to suggest otherwise.
For one, the people who knew him personally said he wasn't suicidal. Was he not happy with what was going on in his life? Could he have improved some of the things? Yeah. Was he about to end everything just because he wasn't happy? He wasn't. Plus, the police weren't actually the ones to find him. His next-door neighbor, William Bliss, was. And this was about an hour after a gunshot was heard.
Now, Reeves was hosting a little get-together, and by the time the shot went off, the people in his house, including his fiancée, were well drunk. So it was around an hour before LAPD were called. Now, whatever the level of toxicity, an hour is an exceedingly long time to wait to call the police.
Now, I personally don't believe that this situation was a suicide. But I'm just going to rapid fire you guys some of the facts that we found because we don't have time to cover just George Reeves' situation. He deserves a video all on his own. There are many out there. It is such a intricate web of things that happened to him. So here they are. Reeves was 3 days away from being married. He had just found out that he was reprising the role of Superman with a pay raise. His body was found on top of the bullet casing, and there was no cartridge discharge residue on his hands or his head. And the gunshot wound was found on his right temple with the gun in his right hand. And if that doesn't seem weird, George was left-handed.
Though it is still on the books as a suicide, the incident smells highly of foul play. And though we could get into further detail on the subject, we do have to move on to our next actor, Christopher Reeve.
Now, we're going to be spending quite a while on Christopher Reeve's franchise. He filmed 4 movies, the last of which was released in 1987. And unlike his fellow Supermen before him, he did not claim any typecasting whatsoever. He didn't believe that Superman had ruined his career. And from the look of his, I guess, repertoire, you could say he wasn't typecast. I mean, he was in an ensemble comedy, Noises Off, the sci-fi thriller Village of the Damned, the time travel romance Somewhere in Time, which is a great movie, and he was in many others.
So rather a diverse actor, I'd say. He did even do a remake of the movie Rear Window in 1998 after his horseback riding incident that left him paralyzed. Reeves was an experienced horse rider, but accidents do happen. He was very open about the situation after his paralysis. He even started a foundation with his wife to help further the research for a cure of paralysis. Sadly, however, on October 10th, 2004, Reeves passed away from cardiac failure at the age of 52 in a hospital in New York.
Now, even though his death was very tragic, I don't think it's the most shocking. That honor would go to Lee Quigley, who played Baby okay. Now, even though Reeves' death was very tragic, it is not what I would call the most shocking of the franchise. That would go to Lee Quigley, because at 7 months old, he played Baby Kal-El, and 14 years later, outside his home in Eastbourne, United Kingdom, he passed away. He was with a friend who tried to revive him, but he couldn't. He just collapsed and died right then and there.
It was later released to the public that Quigley was inhaling aerosol. He started after his parents divorced and he was forced to move in with his grandparents. He was also frequently bullied at school by his peers. He started substance abuse in private, and nobody knew about it until his death in 1991.
Now, sadly, the men who played Superman were not the only ones affected by this so-called curse. We've got Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane alongside Christopher Reeve's Superman. In 1996, a huge manic episode was triggered when a virus was downloaded onto her laptop. Now, this was the only laptop that she had been working on her autobiography for the past 3 years. She frantically flew to California in hopes of retrieving it, but the data retrieval company had no success.
She then disappeared for 4 days, till LAPD found her in the backyard of a Glendale residence. She was then transported to the Olive View UCLA Medical Center. She was placed in psychiatric care.
Now, in May of 2018, Kidder was supposed to be in Novi, Michigan for the Motor City Comic-Con, but sadly, she passed away in her home in Livingston, Montana at the age of 69. Her death was ruled a suicide by self-induced drug and alcohol overdose, and her ashes were scattered among the lilies of Montana that were often eaten by bears.
But oddly enough, this was not her only request as pertaining to the disposal of her remains. Apparently, she enjoyed leaving meat out for the local wolves and watching them eat the meat from the safety of her back porch. She asked her closest friends that if they came to her home and found her dead, to tell no one, put her naked body in a sheet, drag her up Canyon Mountain, and leave it for her other friends, the wolves.
Now we're going to switch over to one of Hollywood's elites, Marlon Brando. He portrayed Jor-El, the father of Superman, twice in 1978 and 1980, and just 10 years later is when the Brando trials began. His son, Christian Devi Brando, was accused, charged, and arrested with the murder of Dag Drolet, his half-sister's boyfriend.
The prosecution could not proceed without the testimony of the half-sister, Cheyenne Brando. But in order to avoid her testifying against her half-brother, Marlon Brando put her in a psychiatric ward in Tahiti. Reports are unclear about whether or not her father put her there or whether she ran there. But while in Tahiti, she gave birth to the son of Dag Drolet, Tuki Brando.
Now, Christian was offered a 10-year plea bargain for voluntary manslaughter. He took the bargain, but only served 5 years in prison with 3 years on probation. Now, after he was released, he claimed the entire thing was an accident, and that he was trying to scare Dag into leaving his sister alone, claiming that he was abusing her mental state, and when he pulled the gun, Dag tried to wrestle it away from Christian, and that is when it went off and killed Dag.
In 1995, Tuki Brando was removed from his mother's custody due to her frequent substance abuse. And on April 16th, Cheyenne was found by her mother, Tarita, having hung herself in their home, not able to handle the loss of her son. She was buried in the Roman Catholic cemetery in Papatee, in the Drolet family crypt. Because of this, neither her father nor her half-brother were able to attend.
Now, Brando did come out and admit that he failed both of his children, and in the later years of his life became a exceedingly reclusive individual. And in July of 2004, at the age of 80, he passed away to idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a rare respiratory disease, in the Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center, Los Angeles, California. He was cremated and his ashes were spread among Tahiti and Death Valley.
Now that was a long, very tragic series of events. The Christopher Reeve franchise was probably filled with the most controversy.
That's true, but when I'm taking a look at it as a whole, I'm not really seeing anything that merits a Superman curse.
They seem pretty cursed to me.
I can see where you're coming from, but the death of George Reeves is mysterious and definitely deserves a video all on its own. The Brando trial, and if you want to talk Richard Pryor's life, his troubles started long before he was starring along Christopher Reeve in the 1983 Superman. And if, again, I'm still only seeing two men who you could even remotely consider cursed.
We have, however, only covered 3 men.
Alright, well then, let's talk about them. John Haynes Newton, Gerard Christopher, Dean Cain, Tom Welling, Brandon Routh, and David Cornsweet. All of these men played Superman on the big screen, and that was the biggest thing they did. They had more of a Kirk Alyn, one and done kind of thing. They have a lot of B-list appearances or movies that they've done, nothing big besides Superman. But like I said, that happens to so many actors and actresses in Hollywood.
You can still consider a lack of a career cursed. It seems as though Superman either kills you or your career.
I would agree with you if we didn't have Nicolas Cage, Henry Cavill, and Tyler Hoechlin.
Nicolas Cage never had a movie. They started production and then canceled it last minute. They had written a script, had a suit made, essentially pretty much everything.
But he has had a phenomenal career, appearing in almost, I think, over 100 films with no great tragedies in his life.
Tyler Hoechlin, then.
6 seasons and a movie with the Teen Wolf franchise, inspired off of Michael J. Fox's one from the 80s. And he played Clark Kent consistently in Superman and Lois since 2021.
So rather steady work, then.
And if we're going to talk Henry Cavill, he's done nothing but get more popular.
Think it's time to reveal the verdicts, then.
I most certainly do. Not a curse.
Cursed.
Why do you think it's a curse?
Because the vast majority of people involved within the franchise suffer unfortunate fates. Lack of career, suicide, substance abuse, death.
I will admit there is a lot of that. But I think a lot of it's self-sabotage. They did this to themselves. Like, you look at Margot Kidder. 3 years working on the same laptop. She never, ever printed anything out or put anything on a floppy disk. What kind of grown woman doesn't back up her stuff? Especially when it's that important.
That doesn't detract from it being less tragic.
Like I'm saying, George Reeves got himself into a relationship with Toni Mannix. He knew who her husband was. He could have avoided that.
Did he know who her husband was, though?
Everybody
was it completely
knew.
Avoidable?
Yes, I think it was. Everybody knew who Eddie Mannix was. He was not a man to be messed with.
Well, I believe in the curse.
I don't.
Stuck in a stalemate, then, I suppose.
Oh well, you guys let us know what you think down below in the comments. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you want to see more content. And thank you for joining us on what we hope is first of many adventures beyond your screen. Thank you guys. Goodbye.